Welcome back to another episode of the Who You Know Show podcast, where what you know is important, but who you know can make all the difference in your business, career, relationships, and life. My name is Trevor Houston, and on this show, you'll learn the strategy, grit, and mindset it takes to overcome obstacles so you can level up in your career, recover your cash flow, and live the life of purpose that God intended for you. Don't forget to look at the mic drop moments time-stamped in the show notes below. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pay it forward, subscribe, and leave an honest review so we can improve. Thanks for listening. My name is Trevor Houston, and please enjoy this episode of the Who You Know Show.
Let's go right in. David is the host of Going Solo and Smashing the Plateau. Tell us a little bit about Going Solo and why you started that podcast.
Actually, I'll back up and tell you about Smashing the Plateau first, because I
Okay.
started that one in 2014. I like meeting people. I like having conversations, particularly with new people. And I found that podcasting was a good medium for me. So we launched Smashing the Plateau to help entrepreneurs navigate transitions. And if you look at what entrepreneurs aspire to achieve, they very often will aspire to achieve a breakthrough. And the reality is, if you look beneath the covers of a breakthrough, it's actually hundreds or probably more like thousands of tiny steps and pivots that they've taken over a long period of time. And it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of focus, and a lot of perseverance to be able to get to the point where somebody else knows something that they perceive as a breakthrough. So we launched the show to talk to entrepreneurs about how they have navigated transitions and particularly dealt with roadblocks that they have encountered. And the focus has been primarily entrepreneurs that are in the second half of their career. So people that are looking to be entrepreneurs for decades, not for a year or two. And then last year, we launched a second show, Going Solo, which is about a transition that I noticed in the Smashing the Plateau audience was pretty prevalent, which is experts that work in their field for often 20 to 30 years or more in corporate. They get fired, usually not performance related.
Right.
And then they start a consulting or a coaching business.
We've seen that.
And it's being successful as an expert, as an employee, is a very different skill set from being a successful business owner.
Right.
So what I see so many consultants and coaches want to do is they want to deliver great results to their clients, which they do when they have clients. But the whole building the business thing is something that they have never dealt with before. And the transition is really tough. And if you add on top of that they're starting their business because they've been fired, there's some other barriers they have to deal with before they can even focus on this building strategy.
They got to let go of some baggage. It sounds like maybe some
Yes,
hang-ups.
big time.
Yeah. Do you feel like anybody can be an entrepreneur?
No.
I agree with that.
I do too.
Yeah, it's a very different mindset. If you're somebody that doesn't like structure imposed on you, yet you can be very structured on your own, you can likely, you have that's one of the key ingredients to be successful as an entrepreneur.
Well, it's almost like that, the analogy of dentists, right? A lot of dentists are great dentists, but they're not so great business owners, right? They don't necessarily know how to run a business. So that's why
they
you
can
feel
drill on people. But
Yeah.
marketing and everything else that goes into a business. Right. So is that what happened to you? Did something happen? Didn't you go through in corporate America and all that kind of stuff? Like we see it a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people that climb that corporate ladder. They get to the top and then companies restructure, right? And it's all about the bottom line. Yep. Foster, you can relate. And next thing you know, you find yourself back looking for work. Did that happen to you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was an employee for 28 years and I've been an entrepreneur for 14.
I bet you like that entrepreneurship a whole lot better. That probably fits David's direction a lot better in life.
I have a good friend who made the transition much earlier in his career, and he was nagging me for, I don't know, probably 15 years, saying, "Why don't you just do what I'm doing?" And I'm like, "Nah, I need the paycheck, I got bills to pay, you know."
Oh yeah.
Same excuses everybody else
That
has.
is tough.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm curious as to the audience. So if anybody in the audience has dealt with this, right? Again, we see it all the time. I want you to know that you're not alone, right? It's something that is very, very common. It's something that we see probably more than anything else, where people spend a lot of time at a company and they move up, and those companies restructure. And again, it's all about money. So, just
Yeah.
know that you're not alone, guys. A lot of people are going through this.
David, would you say, and I'll use you as an example, was there a time in your career that you feel like you weren't ready to become an entrepreneur? You needed the skills that you learned on that job? Or was it really just a matter of taking that step and you had that innately within you?
Well, the reality is I was probably never ready to become an entrepreneur. Maybe I'm still not ready to become an entrepreneur.
Entrepreneurs are crazy, aren't they? We're all nuts.
Well, the thing is, if we stay inside our comfort zone, we are not going to grow.
That's
So, yeah, right. So one of the things you really have to be ready to do is you need to be ready to leap. You think about it,
Yep.
even in the job search, when you go into a new job, you're in a new situation with new people. It very often is not very comfortable at the beginning.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the first
So
time
good.
you do anything, you're not going to be good at it, right? I mean, our first show, you remember
Oh.
that?
My God, our first show, y'all.
It was bad.
Yeah.
Literally, the owner of the studio, we were at KVGI, and Mark Warner was like, "Guys, that was bad. That was rough." We were like reading scripts and like trying to be all, it was bad. It was just awful. The first time you do anything,
Yeah.
I guarantee you the first basket that Michael Jordan shot, he probably didn't make it. I don't know if that's true or not, but I would think that he probably didn't make the shot.
Well, then Mark told us, "You guys need to turn it loose. Come on now, y'all ain't let your hair down." And we said, "Oh yeah."
Yeah, he said, you need to be more real, more authentic.
I just want to say one thing about this, especially when it comes to content creation. Like for those of us that have shows, I hear this a lot, which is if you're not embarrassed by your first episode, you waited too long
Yeah.
to release it. Right. So the same thing is true with everything else in life. If you're not embarrassed by the first time you take a step and you don't make some mistakes, you waited too long.
Our first episode was live, so it was released as we were doing, you know what I mean? We do everything live. I love it. It's actually a skill because it has formed a lot of like pressured environments where we actually thrive pretty well under pressure. Do you remember like City Works
Oh yeah.
and all the events that we've done where
All
it's
of our
just
growth
been
pains.
a lot of chaos around us, and we're trying to do a show around chaos? Yeah, it's fun.
Technology not working.
And guess what?
People not working.
What's
You,
that?
you don't have to agonize over editing.
That's true.
Like,
That's
is it
true.
edited enough? No,
Yeah.
it's edited live. So
Yeah.
there's no editing.
Touche.
So, David, I have a question for you. In talking about how you stepped out, right? You took that leap of faith and put yourself out there, got out of your comfort zone. What are some of the things that I guess continued to drive you, right? As far as maybe running into obstacles, and I'm sure you probably got to some points where you're like, I've thought about throwing in the towel. Like, what are some of the things that got you through that?
Actually, who you know is probably the most important thing. No, seriously, you got to hang around the right people.
Drop it.
You got to hang around the right people. So
Good
John Lee
knowledge, okay.
Dumas, who's a very successful podcaster, he's somebody I really admire. He came on my show, and one of the things he talked about was when he told his family that he was planning to start a 7-day-a-week business podcast in 2012, when it's pretty much unheard of. And he was quitting law school to do this. His family and his friends told him, "John, you're crazy." And what he did was he ended up joining a mastermind with other entrepreneurs, and it was a game changer for him.
I love it because podcasts and shows like this, there's a real value to it now that,
Mhm.
like, okay, I'll give you an example. Joe Rogan, right?
Oh,
You
man,
guys hear
yeah.
that he sold his show for like, I think it was 60 million. I could be wrong about that number. 60 million or something
A
like
lot of
that.
money.
A lot.
Whatever it is, it's a big enough number.
Big enough number. Yep. And it's because there were some social media platforms that were kind of censoring him and kind of like not allowing him to be as creative as he wants to be. And he's out there, guys. We know Joe Rogan's out
Yeah.
there, but they were censoring him, and YouTube wasn't allowing him to do what he wanted to do and things like that. So he went to a different platform, and they paid him like $60 million. And anyways, there's a business in podcasts. That's why they're becoming so popular.
Right.
Yeah.
Golly, went from Fear Factor to the UFC.
Yeah. So now the highest paid podcast
Is he now?
in America or the world. I
Yeah.
don't know. But
Is he now?
yeah, the highest paid one. Yep.
But that's a great point, I think, that you made, David. I mean, it's the network, it's the support. That's one of the other tips I was going to maybe use today. But just surrounding yourself by the right people,
Absolutely.
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
And
Positive
in the job
people.
search and starting a business, anything that you do.
I'm convinced that there's something in each one of us that God gave us, guys, and you'd be surprised if you exhibit that. You'd be surprised how much support you get and what it would do.
David, okay, a couple more questions I have for you. When you were starting your show, right, getting started as an entrepreneur and stepping outside your comfort zone, what were some of the biggest things that you had to overcome, biggest fears that you had to overcome, or how did you overcome those challenges and fears?
Well, one of the things that I started doing early on as an entrepreneur was business networking, right? Going back to relationship building and who you know. A friend of mine invited me to a BNI meeting. I'd never heard of BNI, didn't know anything about business networking. I'd never stood up in front of a room of 30 or 40 people and given a 60-second pitch about myself. I had no idea what to do.
Yep.
Yeah, I was clueless about it.
Do you have an elevator pitch
but-
now?
Yeah, we help entrepreneurs navigate transitions.
Love it. Short.
Love it.
It's
Yeah.
not even 60 seconds. That's like
No,
3
Yeah.
seconds.
But it says everything.
Explaining it, yeah.
You need to be thinking of your value statement, your what do you do statement, your you learned about it 2 episodes ago with Shay Rowbottom. I help X accomplish Y using
Use
Z,
Z.
right? That she
Yes.
gave you the formula.
That was awesome.
Okay. You need to be crafting these statements, write them out. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to use all these big words. Matter of fact, keep it simple. The more simple and easy it is for people to understand what problem you solve, like you will attract what you're trying to attract. So,
And doesn't have to be complicated.
it doesn't have to
Like
be.
what's yours?
I help job seekers get noticed, create opportunities, and take control of the financial impact of job loss.
Love it. I help job seekers navigate the digital hiring process using updated technologies.
There you go. So yeah, guys, I want you to be thinking of this. This could also be like your headline on your LinkedIn profile instead of
Yes.
all this other stuff, because I see a lot of headlines
Headlines.
where I look at it and I don't know what you do. Anyway, you may have alphabet soup in there.
Yeah.
What I call your alphabet soup.
You have over-degreed yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shout out to Kyle Knutson. He's at our firm and he's got all the designations. He's got all, like
You got acronyms all the way around the
oh,
building.
he's got all. I mean, literally A B C F Y Z G K Y L M N O P, like all of them. And I'm like, you used your whole headline for that. He's smart.
And I might remember one of them, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know what any of
I
them
love
mean. Anyway, David, when you think of a very, very successful person, a successful entrepreneur, right, who's just crushing it out there, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Actually, one person that comes to mind, especially in what's going on today, is Rick Edelman, who is the founder of Edelman Financial Services.
Okay.
Also a guest on Smashing the Plateau. He talked about when he got started in the 80s, he graduated college with a specialization in communications. And he noticed that there was a gap between people that provided financial advisory services and consumers, that the people that were providing the services were focused on the numbers and the technicalities of managing money. And they weren't necessarily so great at communicating about the problems that consumers were having with personal finance. So he stepped in and he acted as the communicator between them and the customers. And he's been very successful. He's has a company that's many locations. He's also been out there in the media, but he's been very successful. And one of the things that he has looked at is what's coming down the pike. What is the future going to bring? And the second time he was on Smashing the Plateau, we talked about his the work that he did to write the book, The Truth About Your Future, which talks about how technology in the age of acceleration is causing some massive changes in the way we live, the way we work.
Yep.
And actually, if you look at the underpinnings of what's going on in 2020, a lot of it is stuff that he's been talking about for years.
One last thing, I would like to know, what is your why? Your why statement, you know, what?
Every team has gifts. Every organization has gifts. And when you share your gifts, the world prospers.
I love that.
Mic drop.
Yes. So powerful.
Well, David, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate you all the way from New York. Really appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to the Who You Know Show podcast. My name is Trevor Houston, and if you've enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing wherever you listen and leave us a positive review to help us keep the mics on in the studio. Until next week, that's the show. It's all about who you know.